Boss. Boss, answer me. They're moving against us. The frantic voice crackled through the phone, lying just inches away. Jae-hyun Kang reached for it. His fingertips brushed the edge of the device before his body gave out completely. His wheelchair had tipped over moments earlier. Now he lay helpless on the cold hardwood floor of his bedroom, breathing heavily, one hand stretched toward the ringing phone, while the other clenched into a fist hard enough to turn his knuckles white. The phone vibrated again. Lee Sung-ho's name flashed across the screen. Boss. If you can hear me, pick up. Kwon Tae-sik has gathered the council. They're saying you've abandoned the syndicate. The call disconnected. Another came immediately. Jae-hyun shut his eyes. Not because of the pain. Because for the first time in 20 years, he couldn't get up. Footsteps thundered down the hallway. The bedroom door burst open. Jae-hyun. Zori Okoye froze for the briefest second before racing toward him. Oh my God. She dropped to her knees beside him. What happened? He didn't answer. She tried lifting his shoulders. Don't. His voice came out cold. I can help. I said don't. She swallowed the lump rising in her throat. You've been on this floor for how long? Silence. She looked toward the overturned wheelchair. Then back at him. Did you call me? No. Did you call Sung-ho? No. Anyone? No. Her eyes began to glisten. So you were just going to stay here? He stared at the ceiling. I would have figured something out. She almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it hurt. You couldn't even reach your phone. I said I would have figured something out. She leaned closer. And if nobody came home until tonight? He finally turned his face toward her. You would have been happier. The words struck harder than any slap. For several seconds she couldn't breathe. What did you just say? You heard me. You honestly believe I'd be happier if you died on this floor? I didn't say died. You didn't have to. His jaw tightened. I've become your responsibility. No. I've become your burden. No. You spend every day taking care of a man who can't even stand. I said no. He looked away. I was once the man everyone feared. His voice cracked. I walked into a room, and grown men lowered their heads. Another painful smile escaped him. Now I can't even pick up a phone. Without saying another word, Zuri slid one arm beneath his shoulders and another beneath his back. He resisted. Leave me. No. I said leave me. I married you. Her voice trembled. I didn't marry your legs. She struggled, finally lifting him enough to slide him toward the wheelchair. He hated every second of it. Not because she was hurting him. Because she was helping him. Once seated, he immediately wheeled himself away. Thank you. The words sounded more like an obligation than gratitude. She stood there, watching the distance grow between them despite sharing the same room. Months ago, he would have pulled her into his arms. Now he couldn't even look at her. The silence stretched until she finally picked up the forgotten phone. Several missed calls. All from Lee Sung-ho. Another message arrived. Emergency council meeting. Attendance mandatory. Situation critical. She looked toward Jae-hyun. The council is calling. He didn't respond. Sung-ho says something's happening. Still nothing. She walked closer. They need you. They need someone who can walk. They need their leader. He let out a bitter laugh. My men followed strength. They followed you. They followed fear. They followed your judgment. They followed a myth. He rolled toward the window, overlooking the glittering skyline. That myth died 6 months ago. Zuri's heart sank. 6 months. That was how long it had been since the crash. 6 months since the black SUV had spun out of control on a rain-soaked highway. 6 months since doctors told him the damage to his spine might never heal. 6 months since the most feared syndicate leader in Seoul had become a prisoner inside his own body. But the crash hadn't only broken his spine. It had broken something far more difficult to repair. His belief in himself. She walked beside him. Look at me. He kept staring outside. Jae-hyun. Nothing. She gently touched his shoulder. He flinched. Not from pain. From shame. The movement shattered something inside her. You don't even let me touch you anymore. I'm protecting you. From what? From wasting your life. She shook her head. I choose this life. You shouldn't. I choose you. You chose a man. I still have one. His eyes finally met hers. For a brief second, the man she had fallen in love with appeared. Then he disappeared again. No, I'm still here. The man you married could protect you. You still protect me. The man you married could hold you. You still do. The man you married dreamed of children. She froze. So did I. His voice became almost a whisper. I stole that dream from you. You didn't. My body did. Our future isn't decided by doctors. It already was. Tears gathered in her eyes. You think I stayed because I pity you? He didn't answer. She stepped closer. If pity were enough to keep a marriage alive, half the world would still be married. Silence. I stayed because I love you. He lowered his head. You deserve someone whole. I deserve honesty. You deserve happiness. I decide what happiness looks like. Before he could answer, the phone rang again. This time Zuri answered. Sung-ho. His voice was urgent. Mrs. Kang, where's the boss? She looked at Jae-hyun. He's here. Thank God. What happened? Kwon Tae-sik has convinced several captains that the boss can no longer lead. They're demanding an emergency vote tonight. Her expression changed instantly. What? If the boss doesn't appear? Sung-ho paused. They'll begin replacing him. Zuri slowly lowered the phone. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears. She looked toward Jae-hyun. He had heard every word. For the first time in months. Something dangerous flickered behind his eyes. Not fear. Not despair. Rage. If that fire had truly returned. Then tonight wouldn't just decide the future of the syndicate. It would decide whether Jae-hyun Kang was still its king, or merely a broken man everyone had already buried. If you're already invested in Jae-hyun and Zuri's journey, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments. If you were in Zuri's place, would you keep fighting for love, or would you finally walk away? The apartment remained silent after the call ended. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. The emergency vote wasn't just another meeting. It was an execution disguised as democracy. Jae-hyun slowly wheeled himself toward the dining table. A bowl of untouched porridge still sat there from breakfast. Cold. Exactly where Zuri had left it hours earlier. She walked over and pushed it toward him. You need to eat. I'm not hungry. You haven't been hungry for 3 days. I'm still alive. Barely. He pushed the bowl away. I said I'm not hungry. The spoon clattered against the table. Zuri closed her eyes for a moment before speaking again. You think starving yourself is punishment. He didn't answer. You think refusing therapy changes what happened. Silence. You think shutting me out makes this easier. His jaw tightened. It makes it easier for you. She stared at him in disbelief. You really believe that? You deserve freedom. I never asked for freedom. You deserve a husband. I have one. You have a patient. I have Jae-hyun. His voice suddenly rose. No. The word echoed through the apartment. You have a shell of him. His breathing became uneven. The man you married could stand beside you. He struck his own legs with both fists. These are useless. Again. They don't obey me. Again. They'll never obey me. Stop. Zuri grabbed his wrists before he could hit himself again. Don't ever do that again. He looked at her with bloodshot eyes. You think this hurts? His voice trembled. I don't even feel it. Her grip loosened. Those words hurt far more than anything he had done. She knelt in front of his wheelchair. Listen to me. He looked away. No. Look at me. Slowly, his eyes met hers. I didn't marry you because you could walk. You married me because I could protect you. I married you because you never lied to me. You didn't know who I really was. I knew enough. You knew I was dangerous. I knew you were kind. He laughed bitterly. Kind. The first night we met, you scared half the restaurant. A faint smile tugged at the corner of her lips. You terrified everyone. I remember. But after everyone ran. She gently squeezed his hand. You noticed an elderly waitress carrying 3 heavy trays. He frowned. You took every tray from her. You remember that. I remember everything. You thanked her. You bowed to her. You even paid for her surgery after learning she couldn't afford it. He looked down. I never told anyone. I know. Then how? The waitress told me. She smiled through tears. That's when I knew. Knew what? That the man everyone feared wasn't the real Jae-hyun. His expression softened for the first time all day. But only for a second. The phone buzzed again. A secure message appeared. Emergency council. Attendance confirmed. Lee Sung-ho, Kwon Tae-sik, 8 regional captains, foreign representatives. One line at the bottom caught Zuri's attention. Failure to attend will be interpreted as voluntary resignation. She inhaled sharply. They're forcing you. They're testing me. They're replacing you. Jae-hyun stared at the message for several seconds. Then, without warning, he picked up his phone. Sung-ho. The call connected instantly. Boss. How many captains support Tae-sik? A pause. Officially. 4. And unofficially. Possibly 7. Jae-hyun nodded once. Who switched? Sung-ho hesitated. Boss. I asked who. Captain Du. Captain Hwan. Captain Min. And Captain Seo. Jae-hyun wasn't surprised. I expected 3. So did I. Seo disappointed me. Zuri watched him carefully. His voice had changed. It was calm, controlled. The same voice that had once negotiated million-dollar deals and ended wars between rival crews without firing a bullet. What about overseas accounts? Stable. Our Japanese partners. Nervous. The Singapore shipment. Delayed. Our Busan operation. No issues. Our competitors. Watching. Jae-hyun nodded. They smell blood. Yes, boss. Tae-sik. He requested armed security. A faint smile appeared. Good. Sung-ho sounded confused. Boss. If he's requesting protection. Jae-hyun leaned back. Then he's more afraid than I am. The call ended. Zuri stared at him. How did you know all that? I built this syndicate. You remembered every operation. I remember everything. So why are you hiding from them? His smile disappeared. Because knowing isn't enough anymore. He looked at his wheelchair. They'll only see this. Zuri crouched beside him again. Then make them hear you. Before he could answer, the apartment buzzer sounded. 3 short rings. 1 long ring. Sung-ho's signal. I'll get it. Moments later, Lee Sung-ho entered carrying a leather briefcase. He bowed respectfully. Boss. Jae-hyun nodded. Sung-ho. The older man looked exhausted. Dark circles framed his eyes. I came as fast as I could. He placed the briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside were financial reports, security files, photographs, and a tablet. Tae-sik has been busy. Jae-hyun glanced at the documents. Show me. Sung-ho tapped the tablet. Photographs filled the screen. Private dinners. Secret meetings. Cash exchanges. Captains entering buildings they had no reason to visit. Tae-sik calls them business consultations. Jae-hyun studied every image. Their loyalty meetings. Exactly. Another photo appeared. A luxury hotel. Another. An underground parking garage. Another. A warehouse. He met all 4 captains separately. And nobody reported it. No. Jae-hyun's face remained unreadable. What else? Sung-ho hesitated. There are rumors. I don't deal in rumors. This one refuses to die. Say it. They're telling everyone you can't make difficult decisions anymore. He remained silent. They're saying. Sung-ho lowered his voice. Mrs. Kang has been running the syndicate while you hide. The room became still. Zuri slowly looked toward Jae-hyun. She expected anger. Instead, he simply asked, do they believe it? Sung-ho answered honestly. Some do. Jae-hyun nodded. Good. Both Sung-ho and Zuri looked confused. Good. The more they underestimate me. He folded the tablet closed. The less they'll see me coming. For the first time since the accident, Zuri saw something she hadn't seen in months. Not sadness. Not guilt. Calculation. The brilliant strategist inside him hadn't disappeared. It had only gone silent. She stepped closer. So you'll attend? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the overturned wheelchair marks still visible on the wooden floor. Only an hour earlier, he had been lying there believing his life was over. Now, his enemies had reminded him exactly who he was. He finally spoke. Sung-ho. Boss. Prepare the convoy. Relief flooded Sung-ho's face. Right away. And tell every captain. Jae-hyun's voice became ice. I'm attending the meeting personally. Sung-ho smiled for the first time in weeks. They'll never expect it. No. Jae-hyun looked out the window toward Seoul's skyline. They expect a broken man. He slowly closed the briefcase. Tonight. His eyes hardened with quiet resolve. They're going to meet the king they thought they buried. If you're enjoying the story so far, take a second to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. And tell us in the comments, do you think Jae-hyun should forgive those captains if they return to his side, or has their betrayal gone too far? Outside the apartment building, a black luxury sedan rolled to a stop across the street. Its windows were completely tinted. Inside, a man lowered a pair of binoculars. He watched Jae-hyun's penthouse for several seconds before making a phone call. He accepted. A voice answered from the other end. So, the caller said with a quiet chuckle, the game finally begins. The black sedan disappeared into the evening traffic before anyone inside the penthouse noticed it had ever been there. Jae-hyun adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal suit while staring at his reflection. The tailored jacket still fit perfectly. The polished shoes still gleamed. The expensive watch still rested on his wrist. Everything looked exactly as it had before the accident. Everything, except the wheelchair waiting beside him. His eyes lingered on it. For a long moment, he didn't move. Zuri quietly walked behind him. She knew what he was thinking. If you're waiting for the wheelchair to disappear, she said softly, we'll miss the meeting. He released a slow breath. I hate it. I know. I hate that people see it before they see me. She stepped in front of him. They'll see whatever you show them. He looked at her. And what if they're right? They're not. What if I really can't lead anymore? She smiled gently. You've already started. He frowned. When? When Sung-ho walked through that door. You asked the right questions. You remembered every operation. You knew exactly which captains had switched sides. She rested a hand on his shoulder. The man who built an empire never left. You just forgot he was still here. For the first time that day, he smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It barely lasted a second, but it was real. You always win arguments. I married a stubborn man. You married a dangerous one. I married both. A knock interrupted them. Sung-ho entered. The convoy is ready, boss. Jae-hyun nodded. Let's go. The elevator ride felt unusually long, for bodyguards stood in silence. No one dared speak. The doors finally opened to the underground garage. 3 black SUVs waited with engines running. As Jae-hyun rolled forward, every guard straightened instinctively. None of them had seen him leave the apartment in weeks. One by one, they bowed. Good evening, boss. He acknowledged each with a nod. No speeches. No forced confidence. Just quiet authority. Zuri noticed something immediately. Their eyes. They weren't looking at his wheelchair anymore. They were looking at him. The convoy pulled away. Rain began falling against the windows. Neither Jae-hyun nor Zuri spoke during the drive. Instead, he watched the streets of Seoul pass by. Every intersection reminded him of another memory, another victory, another negotiation, another promise. Then, they passed a section of highway surrounded by flashing warning lights. His breathing suddenly changed. His fingers tightened around the armrest. Zuri noticed immediately. Jae-hyun. He didn't answer. The highway, the rain, the flashing lights. For one terrifying second, he wasn't inside the SUV anymore. He was back inside the wrecked vehicle. Metal screamed. Glass exploded. The steering wheel jerked violently. Someone shouted his name. Then, nothing. Boss. Sung-ho's voice snapped him back. We're here. The convoy stopped outside an abandoned textile factory. To outsiders, it looked deserted. Inside, it served as the headquarters of one of Korea's most powerful criminal organizations. Bodyguards opened vehicle doors. The rain had intensified. One guard instinctively reached for Jae-hyun's wheelchair. I've got it. Zuri's voice was calm but firm. She unfolded it herself. Jae-hyun transferred carefully. Every movement reminded him of what he'd lost. Every movement reminded everyone else too. The massive warehouse doors slowly opened. Conversations stopped instantly. More than 30 senior members turned toward the entrance. Silence spread across the room. Some looked shocked, others uncomfortable. A few looked disappointed. At the far end of the hall sat Kwon Tae-sik, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed. A slow smile crossed his face. So, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Our chairman decided to honor us after all. Jae-hyun rolled forward without responding. The guard stepped aside. Every pair of eyes followed him. Kwon stood. I was beginning to worry. I'm sure you were. His voice remained calm. Kwon gestured toward the empty seat at the head of the long conference table. We saved your place. How thoughtful. I wasn't sure you'd be able to make the trip. A few nervous chuckles echoed through the room. Nobody laughed loudly. Nobody wanted to be the first. Jae-hyun stopped at the head of the table. Without asking for assistance, he locked the wheelchair in place. Then he looked around the room. Captain Do, Captain Min, Captain Seo, Captain Hwan. Every face Sung-ho had mentioned. He memorized every expression. Gentlemen. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. I've heard there are concerns. No one answered. I'd like to hear them. The silence became uncomfortable. Finally, Captain Do cleared his throat. Chairman. He began carefully. People are worried. Worried about what? The future. Our enemies are becoming aggressive. Our partners have questions. Our shipments have slowed. Our rivals think we're vulnerable. Jae-hyun nodded. Reasonable concerns. Captain Min spoke next. We need certainty. You have it. He looked directly at Jae-hyun. With respect, Chairman. His eyes briefly dropped toward the wheelchair. Can you still lead during crisis? The room froze. Even Sung-ho held his breath. Kwon leaned back comfortably, exactly where he wanted the conversation to go. Jae-hyun remained expressionless. What happened at Busan Port 3 nights ago? Captain Min blinked. What? I asked a question. A customs inspection. No, the inspection was fake. Silence. It was arranged by the Beck syndicate to delay our shipment. Captain Min's eyes widened. Jae-hyun continued. You paid 3 million won in unnecessary bribes. You rerouted the cargo through Incheon. You lost 12 hours. You also exposed one of our warehouses. Nobody moved. Jae-hyun looked toward another captain. Captain Seo. The older man swallowed. Yes. Chairman. You authorized the Singapore transfer yesterday. Yes. Wrong decision. Seo looked confused. Our exchange rate changes tomorrow morning. You'll lose nearly $200,000. Seo's mouth slowly opened. How? You should have waited 12 hours. He turned toward another captain. Captain Hwan. The man straightened immediately. Your security chief has been stealing fuel from company vehicles for 6 months. What? Check the invoices. He's been selling them privately. Captain Hwan's face drained of color. Finally, Jae-hyun looked directly at Kwon. And you? The smile slowly faded from Kwon's face. You've attended 11 private meetings this month. Kwon remained calm. Business requires meetings. It also requires honesty. I've been completely honest. Have you? The room grew impossibly quiet. Jae-hyun leaned slightly forward. You've spent more time discussing my replacement than improving our organization. Several captains immediately lowered their heads. No one expected him to know. Kwon slowly smiled again. So you do still hear everything. I hear enough. Then perhaps you've also heard what they're afraid to tell you. Say it. Kwon spread his hands. They don't question your intelligence. They question your ability. His words echoed through the warehouse. You were once the strongest man in this room. He glanced deliberately at the wheelchair. Today. He paused. You're the weakest. The insult hung in the air like smoke. No one dared react. Zuri's hands clenched. Sung-ho took one step forward. Jae-hyun quietly raised one finger. Sung-ho stopped instantly. Jae-hyun never took his eyes off Kwon. Then, to everyone's surprise, he smiled. A slow, confident, dangerously familiar smile. The biggest mistake an enemy can make, he said quietly, is confusing movement with strength. He tapped the side of his head. My legs stopped working. His voice became colder. My mind never did. Every captain felt the shift. The atmosphere changed. For the first time that night, they weren't looking at a man confined to a wheelchair. They were looking at the strategist who had built an empire from nothing. Then one of the warehouse doors suddenly burst open. A bloody guard stumbled inside, struggling to stay on his feet. He collapsed onto the concrete floor. Chairman. He gasped. They attacked. His breathing became ragged. The Eastern warehouse. The room exploded into chaos. Several captains jumped to their feet. Phones rang simultaneously. Bodyguards reached for their weapons. Kwon slowly turned toward Jae-hyun. A faint smile flickered across his face. "Chairman," he said calmly, "shall we see whether your mind alone can save us now?" The warehouse erupted into overlapping voices. "How many men? Who attacked? Call the Eastern unit. Lock every gate." Several captains reached for their phones at once. Others barked orders to their security teams. The bloodied guard struggled to lift his head. They came out of nowhere. They knew exactly where to hit. They burned the storage yard. And they took 2 trucks. Jae-hyun didn't move. He simply watched the panic spread across the room. Kwon folded his arms. "This is exactly what we've been talking about." His voice carried effortlessly over the noise. "Our enemies no longer fear us." A few captains nodded. Captain Du spoke first. "We should send every available unit." Captain Min disagreed immediately. "If we empty headquarters, they'll strike somewhere else. We can't lose another warehouse. We also can't leave the chairman exposed." The arguments became louder. Exactly as Kwon wanted. Jae-hyun finally spoke. "Enough." His voice wasn't loud, but the room instantly fell silent. He looked at the injured guard. "What color were the vehicles?" The guard blinked. "Black." "No." Jae-hyun shook his head. "The accents." "What color were the stripes?" The guard frowned, trying to remember. "Red." Jae-hyun nodded. "How many?" 3 SUVs. "Were their headlights on?" "No." "Were they wearing masks?" "Yes." "Military?" "No." The guard hesitated. They looked rushed. Jae-hyun looked toward Sung-ho. "How long ago?" 18 minutes. Jae-hyun leaned back. "They're gone." Captain Du slammed his fist on the table. "So we just do nothing?" "I didn't say that. They attacked our property. They attacked an empty warehouse." Everyone stared at him. Jae-hyun continued calmly. "Warehouse 7 hasn't held valuable inventory for 4 days." Captain Seo looked confused. "What?" "I moved everything." "When?" "Tuesday." "Nobody told us." "I didn't tell anyone." Kwon's expression changed for the first time. Only slightly. But Zuri noticed. "You expected valuable cargo to be there." Jae-hyun looked directly at Kwon. Someone else expected it too. Silence. Jae-hyun continued. "The attack wasn't about money. It was about information." Captain Min frowned. "I don't understand." "Our enemies knew exactly where to go. They expected expensive cargo. They were wrong." He folded his hands. "Which means someone gave them outdated intelligence." The room became still again. Jae-hyun slowly looked around the table. "So the question isn't who attacked us. It's—" He let the sentence hang. "Who told them where to attack?" No one answered. Kwon broke the silence with a slow clap. "Impressive." His smile returned. "Very impressive." He leaned forward. "But speculation doesn't solve today's problem. It solves tomorrow's." "And what about today?" Jae-hyun didn't hesitate. "Sung-ho." "Boss." "Call Captain Yoon." "The Western Division." "Yes." "Tell him to intercept Route 9. Captain Du looked puzzled. "But the Eastern warehouse isn't connected to Route 9. Is if they're escaping toward the harbor." Sung-ho immediately picked up his phone. "Done." "Call our Busan contact." "Already dialing." "Freeze every payment over 50 million won." "Understood." "Alert customs before midnight." "Yes, boss." Within seconds, the room transformed. There was no shouting anymore. Only execution, orders, movement, direction. The same captains who had doubted him moments earlier were now writing down instructions as fast as they could. Zuri watched quietly. She smiled to herself. This was the man she had been waiting to see again. Not because he was feared, but because he had stopped fearing himself. Kwon noticed the shift as well. His jaw tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. The meeting was supposed to prove Jae-hyun was finished. Instead, it reminded everyone why he had become chairman. A young lieutenant hurried inside. "Report." Sung-ho answered before anyone else could. Captain Yoon intercepted one vehicle. Everyone turned. "What happened?" "They abandoned it." "No drivers." "No. No cargo." No. Jae-hyun closed his eyes briefly. As expected. Captain Du looked frustrated. They escaped. They wanted to. What? They never intended to keep the trucks. Captain Co frowned. Then why attack us? To measure our response. Silence. Our enemies wanted to know how quickly we react. How we communicate. Who gives orders. They've been studying us. Captain Min slowly lowered his notebook. So this was a test. Exactly. The realization spread across the room. Even the oldest captains looked uneasy. Jae-hyun looked toward Sung-ho. Increase internal security. Immediately. Every commander submits financial records. Even mine. Especially yours. Several captains exchanged nervous glances. No exceptions. Kwon suddenly stood. Chairman. Yes. I assume that includes me. It does. He smiled politely. I have nothing to hide. I'm glad. The two men stared at each other. Neither blinked. Neither looked away. It wasn't simply a conversation anymore. It was a chess match. And both knew it. The meeting continued for another hour. Shipment routes were adjusted. Security rotations changed. Foreign partners reassured. By the time everyone began leaving, the atmosphere had completely shifted. When Jae-hyun arrived, they questioned whether he still deserved the chair. When they left, they remembered exactly why he occupied it. Outside, rain continued falling over Seoul. Sung-ho pushed the wheelchair toward the convoy.
Boss, I've waited 6 months to see today.
Jae-hyun looked at him. You never stopped believing. I couldn't. Why? Sung-ho smiled. Because every time everyone thought you were finished, you always came back stronger. For the first time in months, Jae-hyun actually laughed. A quiet laugh, but genuine. Zuri hadn't heard that sound since before the accident. She reached for his hand. This time, he didn't pull away. Instead, his fingers slowly wrapped around hers. Neither of them spoke. They didn't have to. That single gesture meant more than 100 promises. The convoy began driving back toward the penthouse. Halfway home, Jae-hyun suddenly looked through the rain-covered window. Sung-ho. Boss. The accident report. What about it? I want every file. You already have copies. I don't want copies. He looked straight ahead. I want the originals. Sung-ho hesitated. The police sealed most of them. Then find who signed the evidence release. You think something was missed? I think too many things were missed. Zuri turned toward him. You still think it wasn't an accident? He remained silent for several seconds. I remember something. What? The truck. You've told me about the truck. No, this is different. His breathing slowed. It didn't lose control. What do you mean? It. He shut his eyes tightly. Changed lanes. Sung-ho glanced into the rearview mirror. You're certain? I've been trying to remember for months. His voice became almost a whisper. The truck came directly toward us. The SUV fell silent. Zuri felt a chill run through her body. Someone tried to kill you. Jae-hyun looked out into the darkness. I don't know, but I intend to find out. Back inside the warehouse they had just left, the lights remained on. Kwon Tae-sik stood alone at the long conference table. One of his closest associates approached cautiously. You lost them tonight. Kwon poured himself a drink. No, it looked that way. He smiled. I wanted him confident. The associate frowned. I don't understand. The first move was never today's meeting. He picked up his phone. The first move happened 6 months ago. The associate's eyes widened. Before he could ask another question, Kwon dialed a private number. The call connected after a single ring. It's me. A distorted voice answered. Report. Kwon looked toward the rain-soaked city beyond the warehouse windows. He remembers. A brief silence followed. Then the voice asked, How much? Kwon's smile slowly disappeared. Enough to become dangerous. The line went dead. Kwon lowered the phone and whispered to himself. Then next time, we'll have to finish what we started. If this twist caught you off guard, make sure you like the video, subscribe for the next chapter, and tell us in the comments, do you think Kwon acted alone, or is someone even more powerful hiding behind him? Zuri didn't sleep that night. She lay awake beside Jae-hyun, listening to the steady rhythm of the rain tapping against the bedroom windows. Months ago, he would have wrapped an arm around her before falling asleep. Now an entire pillow separated them. Not because she wanted distance. Because he had quietly created it. She turned to look at him. His eyes were open. You've been awake this whole time. So have you. She gave a tired smile. I guess neither of us is very good at pretending. Silence settled between them. Then Jae-hyun spoke. I remembered something else. She immediately sat up. What? The truck wasn't the only thing. What do you remember? There was another vehicle. She frowned. What kind? I don't know. I only remember headlights. They stayed behind us for almost 20 minutes. You never told the police. I couldn't. I didn't remember until tonight. He rubbed his forehead. Everything after the crash feels like broken pieces. She reached for his hand. This time, he let her hold it. I believe you. He looked at her. You never doubt me. I doubt situations. She squeezed his fingers gently. I don't doubt you. His voice became quieter. What if remembering puts you in danger? It already does. I mean worse. She smiled sadly. I married the most powerful crime boss in Seoul. You think danger started tonight? For the first time in months. They both laughed. It didn't last long, but it was enough to break the heaviness hanging over the room. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the dining table. Zuri placed breakfast in front of him. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit. Instead of pushing the plate away, Jae-hyun picked up his fork. She froze. You. He looked up. What? You're eating. I'm hungry. A tear escaped before she could stop it. He noticed immediately. Why are you crying? She laughed through her tears. You have no idea what this means. It means I'm hungry. It means you're trying. He lowered his eyes. I promised you I'd stop acting like a dead man. She walked around the table and kissed his forehead. You have no idea how long I've waited to hear something like that. Before either of them could say another word, Sung-ho entered carrying another leather folder. Sorry to interrupt. You never interrupt. What do you have? The accident files. Jae-hyun's expression hardened. You got them already. I had help. From who? A detective who still owes you a favor. He placed several photographs across the table. Crash scene. Damaged SUV. Police sketches. Tow truck reports. For several minutes, no one spoke. Jae-hyun studied every page. Then he stopped. This. He pointed toward a photograph taken nearly 200 meters from the accident. What about it? The camera. Zuri leaned closer. A traffic camera. No, it shouldn't be facing that direction. Sung-ho looked carefully. You're right. It normally watches incoming traffic. But this one is turned toward the shoulder. Jae-hyun nodded. Exactly. Can you recover the footage? Sung-ho sighed. The official report says the camera malfunctioned. When? The exact moment of the crash. Jae-hyun looked at him. What a remarkable coincidence. None of them smiled, because none of them believed in coincidences anymore. Another page caught his attention. The ambulance. What about it? It arrived in 11 minutes. Yes. It normally takes 23. Sung-ho frowned. You're saying? They were already nearby. Zuri felt another chill. You think someone expected the crash? I think someone prepared for it. Silence filled the apartment once more. Finally, Sung-ho spoke. I've already started checking everyone involved. The police. The emergency responders. The towing company. The road maintenance contractor. Jae-hyun nodded approvingly. Good. But there's something else. Sung-ho slid another photograph across the table. This was taken 2 days before your accident. Jae-hyun picked it up. His eyes narrowed. It showed him leaving a charity event with Zuri. Across the street, parked beneath a streetlight, sat the same model of black sedan they had seen outside the penthouse yesterday. His heartbeat slowed. I've seen this car before. You have. Sung-ho pointed at another picture. And here. Another event. Same vehicle. Another photograph. Outside headquarters. Same vehicle. Another. Airport parking lot. Same vehicle. They were following me. For at least 3 weeks. Zuri looked horrified. And nobody noticed. Sung-ho looked ashamed. We failed. Jae-hyun slowly shook his head. No. We were looking for enemies carrying guns. They were carrying cameras. His phone suddenly vibrated. Unknown number. Everyone exchanged glances. Jae-hyun answered. Who is this? Static. Then, a calm male voice. He should have stayed retired. The line immediately disconnected. The room became silent. Zuri grabbed his arm. What did he say? He knows I'm investigating. Already. Sung-ho looked toward the windows instinctively. We're being watched. Jae-hyun nodded. Yes. But that's exactly what I wanted. Both of them looked confused. You wanted this. If they call. They're nervous. If they're nervous, they'll make mistakes. Sung-ho smiled. You're setting bait. I'm reminding them I'm alive. Before the conversation could continue, another call came in. This time it was Captain Seo. Sung-ho answered on speaker. Captain. You need to turn on the news. The television flickered to life. Breaking news. A luxury logistics company linked to several international investors had been raided overnight. Reporters crowded outside the building. One sentence immediately caught Jae-hyun's attention. Authorities suspect organized crime involvement. Captain Seo sounded worried. Chairman. That's one of our front companies. Zuri's eyes widened. What? We've never had problems there. Jae-hyun stared at the television. No, we haven't. Sung-ho's phone rang again before anyone could react. He answered immediately. Yes. His face slowly changed. What happened? Another pause. Understood. He ended the call. What is it? The tax office. What about them? They froze 3 more companies. Captain Seo was still on speaker. This can't be a coincidence. Jae-hyun quietly turned off the television. No, it isn't. They're attacking us without firing a single bullet. Captain Seo sounded panicked. What do we do? Jae-hyun answered instantly. Nothing. The room fell silent. Captain Seo almost shouted. Nothing. We don't panic. But they're taking our businesses. They're trying to provoke exactly this reaction. Sung-ho immediately understood. If we move money now, we expose every remaining account. Jae-hyun nodded. They're fishing. And we're not taking the bait. Captain Seo finally calmed down. I understand. No. Jae-hyun corrected. You understand after I explain. Our enemies already understand. The line disconnected. Zuri looked at him with admiration. You've changed. He looked surprised. How? Yesterday. You were trying to disappear. She smiled. Today. You're thinking 3 moves ahead. He looked toward the folder, lying open on the table. I don't have a choice. Why? Because whoever tried to kill me is still playing. And this time, his voice became cold. I'm playing back. At that exact moment, several floors below the penthouse, a maintenance worker stepped into the service elevator, carrying a toolbox. He looked ordinary, forgettable, exactly the kind of person no one noticed. As the elevator doors closed, he removed a tiny listening device from inside the toolbox. He smiled. Target has resumed operations. He pressed send. Thousands of kilometers away, someone received the encrypted message. The reply arrived almost instantly. 1 sentence. Then eliminate the wife first. The encrypted message was deleted less than 3 seconds after it was read. The maintenance worker slipped the tiny listening device back into his toolbox, stepped out of the service elevator, and disappeared into the stream of employees leaving the building. No one looked at him twice. That was exactly how he preferred it. Upstairs, Zuri poured another cup of coffee without realizing someone had just signed her death warrant. Jae-hyun was still studying the accident files. He wasn't reading anymore. He was connecting patterns. 3 weeks. He spoke quietly. What? Zuri sat beside him. They followed me for 3 weeks before the crash. Yes. They learned my schedule. They learned my routes. They learned which security teams rotated on which days. Sung-ho nodded. They were patient. They were professionals. Jae-hyun suddenly looked toward Sung-ho. The driver. What about him? He died instantly. Yes. What was his name? Kim Dae-soo. He'd worked for me how long? Nearly 11 years. Jae-hyun lowered his eyes. I never thanked him. Zuri reached for his shoulder. You trusted him. I got him killed. No, he chose to protect you. I was his responsibility. You were his family. Jae-hyun closed the folder. No, he deserved better than becoming another forgotten name in a police report. He looked toward Sung-ho. I want his wife and daughter looked after. They already are. For life. Sung-ho smiled. I made that decision the day of the funeral. Jae-hyun looked at him. You didn't ask. I didn't need permission. A faint smile appeared. You know me too well. I've spent 20 years learning. The moment was interrupted by another phone call. Captain Do. Jae-hyun answered immediately. What is it? Chairman. Captain Do sounded uneasy. Someone requested copies of our internal financial audits. Who? They used government authorization. Jae-hyun frowned. Which department? They claimed to be from financial intelligence. Claimed. The documents looked genuine. But. Captain Do hesitated. The signatures were wrong. Jae-hyun looked toward Sung-ho. They're forging government paperwork now. Sung-ho immediately made notes. This is getting bigger. It was always bigger. The call ended. Zuri looked at Jae-hyun. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. Why? Because this stopped being about taking my chair a long time ago. She folded her arms. Then what is it about? He answered without hesitation. Taking everything. Silence followed. Then Zuri quietly asked, do you think Kwon is capable of all this by himself? Jae-hyun didn't answer immediately. Instead, he stared through the apartment window at the city stretching into the distance. No, you think someone is above him. I know there is. What makes you so sure? Kwon enjoys attention. He always has. He wants people to know when he wins. He tapped the folder. Whoever planned this? Wanted nobody to know the game even existed. Sung-ho slowly nodded, which means Kwon may not be the mastermind. He may only be the face. A heavy silence settled over the room. For the first time, they realized they weren't chasing one enemy. They were chasing an organization hidden inside another organization. Suddenly, Jae-hyun's phone vibrated again. This time the number belonged to someone unexpected. Madam Han. He stared at the screen. Zuri noticed immediately. It's your mother. He didn't move. The phone continued ringing. Finally, it stopped. A message appeared. I heard you're leading meetings again. Call me when you're ready to speak like a son instead of a stranger. Jae-hyun quietly locked the phone. You aren't calling her back. No. Why? I don't know what to say. You've wanted her back for years. I wanted the mother I remembered. His voice became distant. I don't know the woman she became. Zuri understood. Some wounds didn't heal simply because people returned. Before she could reply, the apartment intercom buzzed. Sung-ho immediately became alert. I wasn't expecting anyone. He walked toward the security monitor. A delivery driver stood downstairs holding several flower arrangements. Delivery for Mrs. Kang. Zuri looked confused. I didn't order flowers. Sung-ho pressed the speaker. Who sent them? The driver checked a small card. It says they're from an anonymous admirer. Jae-hyun's expression darkened instantly. Don't let him upstairs. Sung-ho looked back. You think? I don't trust gifts. The driver waited another minute before finally walking away. 5 minutes later, Sung-ho's phone rang. It was one of the security guards stationed outside. Sir. The guard sounded shaken. The flower van just exploded. Everyone froze. What? It exploded 2 streets away. Nobody was hurt. But. The guard swallowed hard. The bomb squad says the device would have detonated when the package was opened. Zuri slowly sat down. Her hands began trembling. They weren't flowers. Jae-hyun looked at her. They were a message. She tried to steady her breathing. They were trying to kill me. No. His voice was frighteningly calm. They were trying to make me watch. The room became deathly silent. Sung-ho immediately issued new orders. Double the perimeter. No visitor enters without facial verification. Every package gets scanned. Increase rooftop surveillance. The guards acknowledged every command. Jae-hyun remained motionless. Only his eyes moved. His mind was already somewhere else. They're impatient. Sung-ho looked at him. What? They expected fear. They expected us to hide. Instead, he reached for his phone. Who are you calling? The one person Kwon believes I don't trust anymore. The line connected. Chairman. Captain Huan answered cautiously. I need a favor. Anything. I want you to spread a rumor. Silence. What kind of rumor? Jae-hyun smiled faintly. Tell everyone. He glanced toward Zuri. That my wife and I are leaving Seoul tomorrow morning. Zuri looked at him in surprise. But we're not. I know. Captain Huan sounded confused. Chairman. Why? Because if someone tries to stop us. His eyes hardened. We'll finally know how close the enemy really is. The call ended. Zuri stared at him. You're using us as bait. I'm using information as bait. What if they attack? They will. She looked away. You sound certain. I am. She took a slow breath before meeting his eyes again. Then promise me something. What? If it comes down to saving me or catching whoever's behind this. She stepped closer until she was standing directly in front of him. You save me. He didn't answer. Jae-hyun. His voice was barely above a whisper. I've already almost lost you once. She gently cupped his face. And I've almost lost you. A tear rolled down his cheek before he even realized it. I can't bury another person because of me. She wiped away the tear with her thumb. Then don't. Fight. Win. And come home. He rested his forehead against hers. I love you. The words came so quietly she almost thought she'd imagined them. It had been months since he'd said them aloud. She smiled through her tears. I was beginning to miss hearing that. He closed his eyes. I'm sorry I made you wait. Before either of them could say another word, Sung-ho's secure phone rang again. He answered instantly. After only a few seconds, the color drained from his face. Boss. Jae-hyun immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? Sung-ho lowered the phone slowly. Our surveillance team followed the maintenance worker who entered this building this morning. And he wasn't maintenance. I assumed that. Sung-ho swallowed. They found where he went. Tell me. He entered a private warehouse owned by. He hesitated. Kwon Tae-sik. Jae-hyun's eyes narrowed. Did they get inside? No. Why not? Because. Sung-ho's voice turned grim. The warehouse burned to the ground 10 minutes later. Jae-hyun's expression became unreadable. They destroyed the evidence. No. He looked toward the flames now visible in the distance through the apartment windows. They destroyed the witness. Somewhere inside that burning warehouse, someone had made sure no one would ever hear the maintenance worker speak again, which meant only one thing. The people behind the conspiracy were no longer covering their tracks. They were erasing them. Orange flames painted the night sky above the industrial district. Even from the penthouse balcony, the smoke was impossible to miss. Jae-hyun never took his eyes off it. They're cleaning the board. Sung-ho nodded grimly. Every person who can expose them disappears. Zuri folded her arms tightly across her chest, so we're always one step behind. Jae-hyun slowly shook his head. No, they're one step ahead. For now. He turned toward Sung-ho. How long before the fire department gets there? They're already there. Police. On their way. Good. Sung-ho looked confused. You think they'll find something? No. They'll find exactly what our enemies wanted them to find. What does that mean? A dead end. He wheeled himself toward his office. Which is why we're not going there. Sung-ho followed. Then where? The place nobody expects. Jae-hyun opened a drawer and removed an old paper map of Seoul. Not a digital tablet. Not a phone. A worn paper map covered with handwritten notes. Zuri raised an eyebrow. You still have that? I never throw away useful things. He spread it across the desk. This. He pointed to a small district near the Han River. My first headquarters. Sung-ho immediately understood. The old accounting office. It officially closed 12 years ago. Exactly. It also has every original financial ledger from our early years. Sung-ho's eyes widened. You think. If someone has been moving money through our organization, they'll eventually touch the old books. Before another word could be spoken, Jae-hyun's secure phone vibrated. Captain Huan. The rumor spread. How fast? Faster than expected. Reaction. A lot. Jae-hyun leaned forward. Tell me everything. Within 20 minutes, 3 different captains called asking why you were leaving Seoul. Names: Captain Du, Captain Min, Captain Seo. No surprise. And Captain Juan hesitated. Quan. Jae-hyun's expression didn't change. What did he ask? He wanted to know which airport. What else? He specifically asked whether Mrs. Kang would be traveling with you. The room became silent. Zuri slowly looked at Jae-hyun. He had his answer. They're not after me first. He looked at Zuri. They're after you. She tried to smile. I guess I've become important. He didn't smile back. You've always been important. His voice carried a seriousness that made everyone else look away. He turned back to the phone. Juan. Chairman. Tell everyone the flight leaves at 10 tomorrow morning. But there is no flight. There is now. The call ended. Sung-ho frowned. We're actually going to the airport. No, but they'll believe we are. A slow grin spread across Sung-ho's face. You've built a trap. I've built several. The following morning arrived beneath gray clouds. News of the chairman's sudden departure had spread farther than expected. Even rival organizations were asking questions. Outside the penthouse, security had doubled. Armored SUVs lined the entrance. Snipers occupied nearby rooftops. Anyone watching would assume Jae-hyun feared an attack. In reality, he was waiting for one. Inside, Zuri adjusted the sleeve of her cream-colored blazer. You really think they'll make a move today? I know they will. Because of the rumor? No. He looked at his watch. Because impatient people always reveal themselves. She walked closer. I need you to promise me something. He smiled faintly. Another promise. If something happens. She held his gaze. Don't blame yourself. He sighed. I can't promise that. You have to. I can't. Why? Because every danger around you exists because of me. She reached for his hand. No, it exists because evil people make choices. You didn't ask for this. He looked down. I brought you into it. I walked into it. You could have left. I never wanted to. Their eyes met. I still don't. A knock interrupted them. Sung-ho entered. The convoy is ready. Jae-hyun nodded once. Let's move. 3 SUVs pulled away from the building. The lead vehicle carried decoys. The second appeared to carry Jae-hyun and Zuri. The third remained empty. Only Sung-ho knew the truth. Jae-hyun and Zuri weren't inside any of them. Instead, they sat inside an ordinary gray delivery van driven by one of Sung-ho's oldest friends. The convoy headed toward the airport. The van headed toward the abandoned accounting office. Halfway across the city, Sung-ho's phone rang. One of the convoy commanders shouted over the sound of screeching tires. They hit us. Sung-ho's eyes widened. Where? Expressway entrance. Casualties. They're using military weapons. The call cut off. Zuri instinctively grabbed Jae-hyun's arm. They actually attacked. Jae-hyun's face remained calm. They attacked the decoys. They believed we were inside. The driver suddenly slowed. 2 black motorcycles appeared in the side mirrors. They're following us. Sung-ho turned around immediately. Boss. I see them. They know. Jae-hyun's voice became cold. No. They're confirming. One motorcycle accelerated. The rider raised a phone. Not a weapon. A phone. He snapped several photographs of the van. Then both motorcycles sped away. They're reporting. Sung-ho reached for his pistol. Should I send a team? No. Let them go. But I want them to feel successful. 20 minutes later, the van rolled into an abandoned warehouse district. Dust covered every building. Broken windows reflected the cloudy sky. The old accounting office stood exactly where Jae-hyun remembered. Forgotten. Ignored. Perfect. Inside, shelves lined every wall. Thousands of old ledgers sat untouched beneath layers of dust. Sung-ho switched on a flashlight. I never thought we'd come back here. Jae-hyun smiled quietly. Neither did our enemies. He rolled toward the oldest filing cabinet. Year 15. Sung-ho pulled out several heavy books. These. Open them. Page after page revealed handwritten transactions dating back decades. Zuri watched silently. What exactly are we looking for? Patterns. Money always leaves footprints. Nearly an hour passed. Nothing. Another hour. Still nothing. Sung-ho sighed. Maybe this was a mistake. Jae-hyun remained focused. No. He turned another page. Then, he stopped. There. Both of them leaned closer. A transfer authorization. Small. Ordinary. Almost invisible. What is it? Jae-hyun pointed at the signature. This handwriting. Sung-ho frowned. It belongs to former Treasurer Choi. No. It imitates his handwriting. What? He never writes the letter K like that. Sung-ho looked again. His eyes widened. You're right. Jae-hyun continued flipping pages. Another forged signature. Then another. Then another. Years of carefully hidden alterations. This wasn't 6 months. His voice dropped. This has been happening for years. Zuri slowly looked up. Someone has been stealing from the organization for years. Not just stealing. He pointed toward a sequence of transfers. They've been building a secret financial network. Sung-ho did a quick calculation. His face turned pale. If these numbers are accurate. He looked directly at Jae-hyun. Someone has siphoned nearly $80 million. The room fell silent. Zuri whispered, "That's enough to build another empire." Before anyone could react, a loud metallic clang echoed outside. Everyone froze. Another clang. Then footsteps. Several pairs. Sung-ho quietly drew his weapon. They found us. Jae-hyun slowly closed the ledger. No. He looked toward the warehouse entrance. They've been waiting for us. The old steel doors began opening inch by inch. A familiar voice echoed through the dark building. I wonder how long it would take. Kwon Tae-sik stepped inside wearing a perfectly tailored black coat. Behind him stood more than 20 armed men. He smiled as his eyes settled on the open ledger. Congratulations, Chairman. His smile widened. You finally found what you were never supposed to see. 20 rifles rose at the same time. The warehouse instantly became a cage. Sung-ho stepped in front of Jae-hyun without thinking. Zuri stood beside her husband instead of behind him. Kwon Tae-sik smiled, still protecting him. Sung-ho didn't lower his weapon. I'd die before I betray him. I know. Kwon chuckled. That's why I always liked you. His eyes shifted toward Jae-hyun. You've always inspired impossible loyalty. Jae-hyun calmly closed the old ledger. You brought too many men. Kwon laughed. You still think you can intimidate me? No. Jae-hyun looked around the warehouse. I think you're afraid. The smile faded slightly. Afraid. You came yourself. You surrounded the building. You brought enough weapons for a war. He leaned forward slightly. People only do that when they're terrified of one man. Kwon's jaw tightened. You should have stayed broken. I tried. And I got bored. Several of Kwon's own men exchanged glances. Even now, their chairman wasn't pleading. He wasn't negotiating. He was controlling the room. Kwon suddenly pulled a pistol from beneath his coat. I've waited 6 months to finish this. Zuri instinctively stepped closer to Jae-hyun. Kwon noticed. There it is. He smiled again. The famous wife. The woman who refused to leave. He pointed the gun toward her. You've caused me more problems than anyone. Jae-hyun's voice became deadly calm. If you point that weapon at her again, you won't leave this building. Kwon burst into laughter. Really? He looked down at the wheelchair. How exactly do you intend to stop me? Jae-hyun never answered. Instead, he looked toward the ceiling. Kwon frowned. What are you looking at? The cameras. Silence. Kwon slowly turned around. Hidden high inside the old warehouse. Small red recording lights blinked. 1, 2, 3. His expression changed. You. Jae-hyun calmly reached into his jacket and removed a small remote. I knew you'd follow us. I knew you'd want to know what we found. So before we arrived, I asked Sung-ho to prepare the only meeting that truly mattered. Kwon's confidence finally cracked. What meeting? Jae-hyun pressed a button. The warehouse doors behind Kwon swung open. More than a dozen luxury vehicles rolled into the compound. One after another. Captains Du, CO, Min, Kwon, foreign business partners, senior advisors, even leaders from allied organizations. Every influential person Kwon had been trying to manipulate walked inside. Each had received an anonymous message saying, "Come if you want to know who betrayed the syndicate." Kwon slowly lowered his gun. What is this? A trial. The captains looked around in confusion. Captain Du stepped forward. Chairman. What's happening? Jae-hyun looked toward Sung-ho. The projector. A portable projector flickered to life against the warehouse wall. Video began playing. The room became silent. Hidden surveillance footage. Kwon entering private meetings. Cash changing hands. Forged financial documents. Secret bank transfers. The maintenance worker entering Kwon's warehouse. Phone records. Voice recordings. Then, the final video. Rain poured onto a dark highway. A truck waited beneath an overpass. Another vehicle blocked an exit. The timestamp matched the night of Jae-hyun's crash. Gasps echoed through the warehouse. The footage zoomed in. Kwon stepped out of a black sedan. He handed an envelope to the truck driver. The audio wasn't perfect, but one sentence came through clearly. Make sure he never walks again. The recording ended. Absolute silence. Captain Seo stared at Kwon. You. Captain Min slowly stepped backward. It was you. Captain Du looked physically sick. You nearly destroyed all of us. Kwon's face twisted with anger. Do you actually believe this? Nobody answered. He looked around desperately. I built this organization too. Still, nobody moved. The loyalty he had purchased disappeared in seconds. Jae-hyun looked directly into his eyes. You made one mistake. Kwon laughed bitterly. Only one. You believe fear lasts longer than respect. He looked toward every captain. I built this family. I made mistakes. I made enemies. I even lost myself. His voice softened. But I never betrayed the people who trusted me. He turned back toward Kwon. You did. Kwon suddenly raised his pistol. If I can't have this syndicate, no one will. Before he could fire, one of his own bodyguards grabbed his arm. Another knocked the weapon away. A third stepped back from him entirely. Within seconds, every man Kwon had brought lowered his rifle. None of them were willing to die for him. Kwon looked around in disbelief. You cowards. No one answered. The sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Growing louder. Closer. Kwon's eyes widened. The police. Jae-hyun nodded. I sent them the evidence an hour ago. You'd hand over your own business. I'd rather rebuild it honestly than rule it through traitors. Kwon took one last desperate look around before running toward the rear exit. He never made it. Waiting outside were officers who had already surrounded the building. Within moments, he was on the ground in handcuffs. As he was dragged away, he turned toward Jae-hyun. This isn't over. Jae-hyun calmly answered. It ended the day you underestimated my wife. Weeks passed. For the first time in months. The apartment felt like a home again. The silence between Jae-hyun and Zuri no longer came from pain. It came from peace. Madam Han finally arrived. The reunion wasn't easy. Mother and son stood facing each other for almost a minute without speaking. Then she slowly walked forward. I failed you. Jae-hyun lowered his eyes. No, I gave you reasons. Tears filled her eyes. I should have come back sooner. So should I. Without another word, she embraced him. Years of anger disappeared in a single moment. Zuri quietly stepped outside a room, allowing them the privacy they both deserved. A month later, Jae-hyun began an advanced rehabilitation program in Zurich. The specialists made no promises, only possibilities. During one therapy session, the lead doctor smiled. Try again. Jae-hyun concentrated. His right foot moved, only slightly, barely enough for anyone else to notice. But Zuri noticed. Her eyes immediately filled with tears. You did it. He laughed. I think I did. The doctor nodded. It isn't a miracle. It's progress. For Jae-hyun, that was enough. Back in Seoul 6 months later, friends, family, and loyal allies gathered in a quiet garden overlooking the city. Jae-hyun still arrived in a wheelchair. But this time, he wasn't ashamed of it. As music filled the air, Zuri walked toward him wearing an elegant ivory gown. She smiled exactly the way she had on their first wedding day. The officiant looked at them. You've already promised each other forever. So why are we here today? Jae-hyun answered first. Because forever is a promise worth renewing. The guest smiled. He looked at Zuri. When I lost my ability to walk, I thought I'd lost the right to love you. His voice trembled. You spent every day proving I was wrong. I can't promise perfection. I can't promise tomorrow. But I can promise that every single day for the rest of my life, I'll choose you. Tears rolled freely down Zuri's cheeks. She took both of his hands. You once believed I stayed because I felt sorry for you. She smiled. I stayed because you were always the man I fell in love with. Not because you were strong, but because you taught me what strength really looks like. I choose you today. I'll choose you tomorrow. And I'll keep choosing you for as long as God gives us time. Their lips met as applause echoed through the garden. Madame Han smiled through tears. Sung-ho quietly wiped his eyes before pretending dust had gotten into them. Even the hardened captains looked away to hide their emotions. Later that evening, as the reception came to an end, Jae-hyun rolled onto the balcony overlooking Seoul. Zuri joined him. The city looks different. He smiled. No, I do. She laughed softly. I think we both do. He reached for her hand, not because he needed help, but because he wanted to hold it. Together, they watched the lights of the city sparkle beneath the night sky. The future was still uncertain. Recovery would still take time. Life would still bring new battles. But they no longer feared them, because they had already survived the hardest one, and they had survived it together. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another unforgettable story. We'd also love to hear from you in the comments. What was the most powerful moment in Jae-hyun and Zuri's journey? Your thoughts help this community grow, and your support means more than you know. Sometimes love isn't measured by how perfect life becomes. Sometimes, it's measured by who refuses to leave when life falls apart. And in the end, that kind of love is stronger than fear, stronger than power, and stronger than fate itself.